morning and welcome. This is Tampa Home Talk and welcome to another exciting 2 hours. And I promise you, we got a full show lined up. And Leo, I know you want to talk all about the collapse of the building, and we will.
I know we have a great 2 hours lined up, but I don't have anything in front of me. I don't have an agenda.
Here, this is our agenda right here. There you go.
This looks like a contract. What, do we have a lawyer on this hour?
You have it all memorized, man.
Oh, we do have a lawyer on.
We do have. And before we hijack the hour with Mr. David Jordan and myself to jaw-jack about the contract, we're going to talk about the market stats real quick. Otherwise, we probably won't fit them in. Right, Leo?
Let's do it.
Would you like the honor of the numbers this week?
625.21. New listings are just under 800.
Listen to this, David. Listen to this numbers part, and you'll understand why we've talked so much in the last 30 days.
Solds are just over 1,000. And pendings are... Adam is pending. Adam from Tally Insurance is pending, and he just walks in the door.
He's not even mic'd up. Give him a break.
Okay, and pendings is just over 1,100. So that's we're running about the same as last week.
I know.
So we've been flat for the summer so far.
Well, you say flat, but I'm looking at this going, okay, we're still way outselling more than
we're still outrageously in the wrong direction as far as having listings available for people, but
yeah.
But we're pretty flat. I mean, we've been consistent these summer months. We're having 6 hot summer months here, and we are...
You say flat, but I'm looking at it going, yeah, like we still keep consistently selling more than is coming on the market, and that's what's creating this crazy, tight, just insane market, like stuff we've never seen in a different kind of way.
I've never seen Adam shirts before. That's very flowery. He is all set for summer.
Do you not love this?
I love that shirt.
You barely rolled in here, Adam. We're like...
No, okay. So the reason I'm dressed like this is I'm going to go to the zoo later with my niece and nephew. It's going to be awesome.
Did you sleep last night? Because you do not look like you did.
Oh, no, I slept last night.
Okay.
Oh, well, welcome.
Did you go home last night?
I did go home last night.
Welcome aboard, Adam. Welcome aboard.
It's good to be here.
All right, so... back to our guests, because we got some fun stuff planned about this hour. And we're going to share some stories, no names, of course. But we're going to talk about some things in the contract. And David, I think you're probably as familiar with this contract as I am, right? Would you say?
I'm fairly familiar. I've been practicing for about 13 years.
Let's make sure we have the same version, right? You got
I have the as-is.
619.
I don't have the 619. I was looking at all this, and I think the 6... Yes, I do. Sorry, I have the 619.
Okay.
But my understanding is the 619 just dealt with Miami-Dade updates. There weren't
I think
any
you're right
real-
about that. Yeah, there was nothing major in the contract. So what we're going to talk about this hour is what we call the FAR bar as-is contract. And so let me explain to you what that is. So the FAR bar as-is contract is this unilateral contract that most of the state of Florida uses, except for the different city that's kind of like its own country in the state of Florida, which has its own provision in the contract.
What's so special about? I mean, we could do an hour on what's so special about insurance in Miami-Dade, but what's so special about real estate in Miami-Dade?
Well, there's more fraud there than anywhere else in the whole state. Let's just start there, right?
Oh
David?
yeah. Well, I mean that would be on the insurance topic as well.
I think any place, any market where you have the most foreign investors buying property sight unseen, or the most people trying to launder money sight unseen, you're going to have the most fraud. Am I right, Mr. Lawyer?
Of course, yeah. Well, you know what? Whenever
it's Dr. Lawyer to you.
Dr. Lawyer.
I was actually...
We're going to have no fun this hour, David.
No,
is it Dr. Lawyer?
It can be. I am a juris doctor.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dr. Lawyer.
My wife calls me the doctor of love.
Oh, look at that.
Yes. So
Proud
shout
of you.
out to my wife.
We just gave you a new
Maybe
nickname in the studio. You didn't even know it.
if she's listening. But yes, no, I was actually born in Miami and lived there, I don't know, about 6 or 7 years when I was younger.
It changed a lot.
It has,
hasn't
yeah. That was back in the late 70s, early 80s.
Oh, yes. It's a different place now.
But yeah, I mean, I imagine that they do have a lot of, what's that, FinCEN? It's that fraud where they, like the federal government will set up a little area and they'll say, we're going to be investigating this area. It's in the contract. But also, I bet they have a lot of FIRPTA issues. But yes.
What's FIRPTA?
FIRPTA is the Foreign Investment in Real Property Tax Act.
Oh.
So it has to do
I
with
thought it was the
people
hottest
that
seller.
are
People
not
that
US
are
citizens.
foreign sellers. And it's actually interesting because
So we tax them more?
Well,
Yeah,
foreign
knock on wood,
sellers.
I've never had to
What's
deal with
what's
that.
the requirement? Isn't it foreign sellers? They have to hold back like 25% or something.
it's not the seller. The buyer has to hold back.
Oh, the buyer.
I don't know the percentage, yeah. But so it's actually a pretty good idea that if you're going to be purchasing. Does this station go down to Miami?
No.
Yeah,
Don't.
no, actually, we're all over the world.
Sarasota.
Make sure you like and
YouTube.
subscribe. Smash that.
Nobody
Smash
in
the button.
Miami is listening
No,
to
this
this.
No.
particular
Okay.
station is.
So we can badmouth Miami all we
Well,
want.
you know, let's be tactful about it.
The
But
new-
yeah, no, the buyer has to withhold that. So.
So what's
if
the
you
deal with
think-
that? I don't understand. Why is the buyer responsible for withholding taxes for the seller that's
This-
not a U.S. citizen?
This is a federal statute. So if you've ever read a federal statute.
No,
and-
I've never read a
well,
federal statute.
And it's IRS, and it's Code of Federal Regulations. So if you've ever read a federal statute or looked at a federal statute, it's kind of like an insurance policy.
Oh, there you go, Adam.
The insurance policies are like, this applies unless A, B, C, and F apply. So read Part 2D, and then maybe you'll be covered.
That's
so,
okay. Got it.
anyways.
Yeah, no,
so
that's
yes.
a pretty good summation of an
man.
insurance policy. I'm proud of you.
You're welcome.
So that going back to the FAR bar as is. So what this contract is, it's kind of unilaterally used by almost every agent here in the area. And really most of Florida. I would say all of Florida, pretty much, except for Miami-Dade, like Broward County areas. We pretty much all use this same contract. And so this contract was put together and agreed upon by the Florida Association of Realtors and the Florida Bar. And so the agreement and the thought behind this contract is to make it a very fair and charge neutral contract between both parties. Would you say that's a pretty good summary of this contract?
Oh, yeah. No, this contract is great. I'm pretty sure it came out in the 90s. I don't want to overstep because, 90s.
No, there's been some
I was in high
variations
school.
from it.
Yeah,
well,
but
I remember
it's changed a lot.
Yeah, the contract used to be like 4 pages, and then it was like 6, and then it was 8, and now we're up to 12 with no addendums.
How long have you been a realtor?
A long time. Like I've been an agent for almost 2 decades, and I was on the mortgage side before that. So 30 years I've been looking at these contracts.
I could call you for questions.
Maybe. But this is where,
this.
like, you and I do well, like, pinging off of each other to ask about the very specifics. So
Right.
what we're going to do today is just kind of dive into what all these paragraphs say. We're going to give you a short and skinny of it, and then we're going to share a couple of stories along the way. I got a couple of my own that Dave and I have
bet
talked
you had a
about
lot.
just in the last 30 days, not to mention 30 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
And here's the point, right? Going back to these numbers, the number of pendings are through the roof. The number of solds are substantially higher every week than the number of new active listings. So that creates this environment where it's super competitive among buyers, among sellers. We've never seen more people make offers without contingencies because that's not going to get accepted. We've never seen more people, offer just crazy escrow deposits on an average sale price home. I've never seen a market where we've had people say, I'm going to flat out waive the appraisal contingency. So no matter what it comes in, and I'll pay the difference. So we've seen a lot of that, in this whole year. It's been a lot of it. And so
It was a great economy. I mean, up until, I guess, February 2017, March.
well, I mean,
I think people are still riding that wave.
so a lot of people say, oh, this feels like the crash of 2006. This feels like another 2006. We get that a lot.
Right.
And I tell people, this is not 2006 at all. Mm-hmm. And the difference is back in 06, you had a lot of people that, weren't qualified to buy at all.
Yep.
And basically they weren't, there was documented cases of dead people, right? And dogs buying properties. Let's get real.
Dogs.
Was it that extreme? Probably not. I think there was a
Dogs.
couple cases inflated, but I will tell you there was a lot of people buying that were not actually qualified to buy.
Oh, of course. I know actually a firefighter, who doesn't make a whole lot of money, but they lent him and his wife, who actually she worked at the VA, and she made pretty good money, but they lent them, I think it was like $700,000 on this house in Oakstead. They purchased it and then they refinanced it. So of course that one fell into foreclosure, actually. That was one of my first short sales, if we can remember those. You
Yes.
say the word short sale and like a shrill goes up your neck, and it's
Well, I've done them for a long time,
Yep.
and I mean, I knew what they were before most people knew what they were.
yeah.
So as a matter of fact, if you go back and you look on my YouTube channel, you'll see that I had a couple of video testimonials from clients that I did a short sale, and this was probably very, very early 07, which means most people didn't even realize the market was about to change.
Yep.
So yeah, that's pretty much how long we've been in this space. Loss mitigation department's always been around. They just weren't prepared to handle that volume.
Yep.
And so, all right, this is Tampa Home Talk. We are going to go through the purchase and sale agreement that most of us use in this day and age. So if you'd like to learn a thing or two, or you know someone that's thinking about buying or selling, or maybe they're in the middle of it right now, could be a great time to tune in for this hour. And if you want to catch us at our off-air number, 813-377-2775. Again, 813-377-2775. You can call or text. We'll be back right after this break.
Welcome home.
Welcome home.
You did it.
Yes.
You almost didn't, but you did.
Adam,
it.
you look so
muscle memory.
You look so relaxed over
I
there.
know. It's going to be a great day.
It's a nice watch, Adam.
Thank you. My wife bought that for me.
He's already on vacation mode. He's going to the Tampa Zoo at Lowry Park.
Why did they switch that? I know you're a patron of the animals.
I'm a local supporter of the institutions that support animals. They changed the name because they wanted to have Tampa in the name of the zoo. So it would get
I think
more
it was a good idea.
more notoriety. People would know where it is, because when you called it Lowry Park Zoo, no one knew. But when you call it Zoo Tampa at Lowry Park, people know it's in Tampa.
You know, I haven't been to a lot of zoos. How does our zoo rank against, other major metropolitan area zoos?
I think we're up there, aren't we?
That's a good question. I mean, as a zoo connoisseur and a member of
Exactly, that's
the
what I'm
AZA, which
asking.
is the American Zoo Association, which also is aquariums,
I knew this about him, by the way.
our zoo has some unique features to it. With the proximity of Busch Gardens and the Tampa Aquarium, they actually share animals between the three places. That allows them to have larger breeding programs. So that's one of the advantages. As far as how our zoo compares to, let's say, the gold standard of zoos, which is Miami, it's not about people walking through the zoo. It's the enclosures for the animals. So it's a hike. In Miami, they'll rent you a bicycle. They'll tell you about the trolley schedule and the train. You'll get the map. You'll laugh. You'll walk around a little bit and say, I should have gotten the bicycle.
Okay. It's huge. I've never been to the Miami
It's
Zoo.
huge. The enclosures are huge. The Tampa one, the enclosures aren't as big. So, but they still are pretty meaty and pretty size-like. So we've got a good features. And I think between the trade-offs and the joint programs between the three local establishments, Busch Gardens, the Tampa Zoo, and Lowry Park.
I never knew they
and the
traded
Tampa Aquarium.
animals.
Yeah, they do.
That's pretty cool.
Lowry
cool.
Park was actually the Tampa Zoo back before, because, it wasn't really before officially, but if you ever remember the movie Goodfellas, where they fed somebody to the lions, that was the Tampa Zoo.
Really?
Nice.
Okay, all right, let's get to the contract, shall we?
Fun.
That's what
Let's
this
do
hour
it,
is about.
Right?
It's not zoo
Contract
talk.
stuff.
I know you guys want to talk about zoo stuff.
I will
Yeah.
promote animal conservationalism and the institutions locally that do that any chance I get.
I know.
And I just like seeing Leo get excited, so.
No animals were harmed in the making of this radio
Right.
show.
Thank you. Whew, appreciate that disclosure, man. All right. All right. So as is residential purchase for sale, or contract for sale and purchase. So
Okay.
I guess let's start at the very top. So the as is contract means you like it, you buy it, you don't, walk away. Right? Pretty
Subject to
fair?
paragraph 12.
Yeah, which we're going to get to.
Subject to
Which we're going to get to.
Let me go back.
So
let me
let's talk
reference
about
paragraph 12.
Let's talk about a couple things that are important in the contract. So I would say, looking at page 1, I highlighted a couple of things. One of the first things I highlighted was the legal description. And I think some people, may graze past that, but one of the important things, and this is what we teach new agents with our office, is I don't want anybody manually typing the real estate legal description. I want them copying and pasting it from public records.
Well, sometimes it's like a meets and bounds.
Yeah.
So
It's a paragraph long.
Right. I've seen most people will type out the first couple of lines and then just leave it like that. Generally, in court, if you have sufficiently identified the property with the address and with the property tax ID, it's generally going to be okay, but you are correct.
So usually
it should have like an Exhibit A if it's a long
If it's a lot in block, we'll put it here.
Yeah.
If it's a meets and bounds, the super long ones, we'll stick it in the back.
Correct.
Where all these lines
meets
are.
and bounds.
Meets and bounds.
That's
It's
where
not
you
meets
see,
like meat, M-E-A-T. It's
right. Well, you'll see
M-E-T-E.
like a legal description that says the northwest corner of the south half corner of the whatever.
1/4 of the 1/4
yeah,
of
go
the
around
half.
the fence post. Or
Gotcha.
Right.
Like when they section off properties.
Well, it all comes from the Florida property like grid system.
Right.
Okay.
So
North Carolina didn't have that. When I first started searching titles, it was actually, begin at the rock on the creek with a mark in it. So that was, when it came to Florida, I had to sort of think backwards to southwest quarter of the northwest quarter of the.
yes.
So
It's
it
a
was
lot to
interesting.
wrap your mind around. I
It is.
remember even in real estate school, like remembering that. But all right, so the first paragraph talks about what's included with the contract. And so one of the things that I say, and I highlighted light fixtures specifically, David, because how I explain it to people is I tell my sellers, if you were to take your house and turn it upside down, everything that would fall to the ground is considered personal property. Everything that's permanently attached to the wall or otherwise is real property. The buyer expects it to stay with your home.
Correct.
Sound fair enough?
Yeah.
So I had this contract one time. I remember the seller was an attorney and so was the buyer.
Oh, fun.
And even better, neither one of them was a real estate attorney.
Uh-huh.
And so we were trying to put together this contract, and then they were both like bringing in real estate attorneys, and I go, look, let's talk about this because we can't change the whole FAR bar, okay? Or you guys are going to be getting together rewriting it, but let's keep this simple and have a meeting of the minds. So they finally agreed. And my client says, you're in good hands. She knows the contract. You call me if you need me. So that kind of made things a little bit simpler. But I always think about this paragraph. I think about that situation when I see this paragraph because this house was so unique. It was a house in South Tampa off of Bayshore, and the lady had like 200-year-old French drapes. She had big gates that were like on the right and the left side of the windows, kind of like as shutters on the inside. So she had very unique decor. And she was like, oh, my 200-year-old French drapes are not staying. So in my mind, I go, okay, what room? So on that particular contract, we said, let's do this. Let's meet at the property. We are literally going to go room by room. So we have a very clear example of what's staying and what's not. Because think about that. Who wants to be involved where there's two attorneys fighting about whatever? Like
In a
it's
lawsuit
just,
over 200-year-old drapes.
yeah, it's much better to just get crystal clarity on that from the very beginning, and it's a super smooth transaction.
The carpet, the drapes, everything.
So what do you do then? Okay, so let's for example, like a normal person, not two attorneys in South Tampa, but a normal person, right? So everything's supposed to stay. Let's say they have a nice shower head, right? You know, one of the rain ones. It just looks awesome. They take it with them. What do you tell your buyer? What are you going to do?
So when we do the final walkthrough, we would say, hey, we noticed the rain shower is missing. Do you know where it went?
Right.
That's kind of what we would do. And so we would start at, and then by this point, it's usually the day of closing, maybe the day before.
Right.
So it's probably a little too close to actually go put the rain shower back. So normally the seller is going to be writing a check for the rain shower that they removed, and the buyer can go buy a new one.
Gotcha.
And
Okay.
that's going to go to the as-is requirement, which is escaping me where it is right now. But there is an as-is requirement, probably paragraph 18. But nevertheless, the property has to be as is on the date that you contracted. So anything that's missing, that's why
It's got to
walkthroughs
be
are
the
important.
same way you expect it at the time you wrote the contract. It's got to be the same when you walk through.
What's the pettiest thing you've seen?
Oh gosh, you name it. I've seen it.
I've actually never seen a contract fail because of light fixtures or drapes.
No, I know, but I'm asking
I
like
have.
what a buyer or
She
seller
probably
does.
has,
I've
yeah.
had ones where literally we're like, okay, let's just write a check for these stupid light fixtures and like make it go away.
Can we write
I'll take it out of
Doesn't
my
make
commission.
sense. Well, I mean, at the end of the day, it's much better to have two happy buyers and
Correct.
sellers than to fight over a dang light fixture.
Yeah,
you know what I
correct.
mean? Like, anyway, that's my thought.
I
on
must
it.
have got you heated.
So paragraph 1, section E talks about exclusion. So if a seller did have that fancy light fixture in the foyer that is not staying, or the 200-year-old drapes, that's going to go
That's where you
very
put it.
specifically in the exclusion part of the contract.
A lot of people overlook that. I mean, I actually overlooked that. I look at the names, the legal description, or the address, and I go right to the purchase price. And I think a lot of people do that also.
So as the agent, what we do is the first thing we do is look in the realtor remarks. So typically if there's something the seller does not want to convey with the sale, they will put that there. So when we write the offer, we are basically putting that on the contract. Now, there's times that buyers make offers. So let's say a common one is the washer and dryer.
Right.
Seller says, we're not leaving the washer and dryer, especially during COVID, right? It was hard to get stuff. People weren't leaving stuff. So buyer's agent puts together an offer. They present the offer. It does not have washer and dryer excluded here. And sometimes it's not even really up here. So then you're going to like the default stuff in the contract, which I don't think it says washer and dryer. Yeah, it doesn't. And so basically that's one of those weird gray areas that people end up arguing about at closing. So then we normally are going to go back and re-reference the MLS profile sheet, which we typically have people.
And on that, it'll say washer dryer included, or
it'll
not?
say excluded, or it doesn't convey in the realtor notes. But I've also seen where sometimes it says it's excluded in the MLS, but then the buyer, when they prepare the offer, will put it in the items included on section D. And so let's say they're not paying attention, right? Listing agent doesn't catch it, seller doesn't catch it, and they're just excited they got an offer, right? They sign it. Well, now their washer and dryer are staying, even though they didn't intend for it to.
Gotcha.
So you have to think, they made an offer. This is their offer. Even though the seller says, I don't want to sell it, this is what they're presenting.
Even though washer dryer would be personal property?
Yes, but if you look at section D, it pertains to all that personal property I was talking about. Blinds, window treatments, appliances, all that sort of stuff. 813-377-2775. If you got questions on your contract or you got something you want to talk about, we are going to get through this whole contract, believe it or not, in an hour. We're going to have to go fast, David.
I don't believe it.
Even with my distractions and off-topic tangents?
Perhaps,
I
probably.
believe
Got to
it
keep
and
that to a
not.
minimum. All right, 813-377-2775. We will be back right after this break. I guess, real quick on the first page, time period for acceptance means the deadline you're giving the seller to reply, and closing date, which is a firm date. We'll be back in just a minute.
Welcome home. This is Tampa Home Talk, talking all about the real estate contract, the FAR
Aren't you
bar
excited?
contract.
You're gonna know all about
Oh
this,
my
Adam.
goodness, I've never been more excited in my entire life. This is amazing. All right, like I love this stuff. It's like when you get your policy packet every year. I know everybody opens it up like it's Christmas morning, and you just read through all 50 pages to see what's going on in your insurance policy.
Well, speaking of insurance, I was very happy to see, because you've been talking for months about how all these premiums are going up, and you just told me I'm saving $5,000 on my business insurance.
My premium went up on my homeowners. I saw that.
Mine did too.
The homeowners market is difficult right now. And I'm sure as you're going through, you're talking about contracts, and part of it is being able to get insurance. We even talked about the flood on the back end. I think you're going to run into a financing issue, especially with people that have a DTI sort of problem.
That's another provision in the contract we're going to talk about. That's what I was going to say. All right, we got to get moving on this contract.
Yeah,
let's
cruise into what you want to get to.
All right, so let's talk about paragraph 5, page 2 on the FAR bar. That's a hot button right now, isn't it, David?
Oh, yes. Extension of the closing date.
Extension of closing date. Let's talk about this. As a matter of fact, would you do the honors of reading this paragraph?
Sure. Paragraph 5A.
Yeah.
Okay, paragraph 5A. If paragraph 8B is checked.
Wait, let's talk about that as real quick. So 8B means they have a contingency
financing
to get a loan.
contingency.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, normally it'll be like 30 days. Sometimes they put 45. Actually, the FAR bar had 45 after the 2014 change, right?
Yeah.
So paragraph 8B is checked and closing funds from buyer's lender are not available on closing date due to Consumer Financial Protection Bureau closing disclosure delivery requirements. CFPB.
Love that. You didn't even stumble. You did great.
Then closing date shall be extended for such period necessary to satisfy CFPB requirements, provided such period shall not exceed 10 days. I actually got into that a little bit yesterday because I have a client who has an interesting issue with that right now, and that's it's easier to look at the Code of Federal Regulations. I think it's 1026 CFR 12-1026, and that is a federal statute, as I was talking about earlier. That is a crazy thing to look at.
Federal is always going to trump anything local, right? Is that pretty standard?
Not always, but yes. In this case, yes, if it's a federally backed mortgage. I've had some people that were doing private lending. And
Wait,
they were
what constitutes a federally backed mortgage? Because technically that would only be FHA, VA, and USDA, right?
No.
Because Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are not technically federally backed.
Yes, they are. Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, that's going to be a federal loan.
They got bailed out.
I know, but
think to your bailouts. They
so
got
they're
bailed out.
technically not, and I'll tell you why. Like when you look at the mortgage insurance, like on FHA, for example, it's called MIP, right, which is mortgage insurance premium. Federal government sets what that mortgage insurance, which insures the loan against default, is going to be. On conventional, which would go through Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, it's PMI, which is private mortgage insurance. That's privately underwritten, and the rates actually change based on the risk. So if they like it, if it's got better credit scores, all of that sort of thing, your PMI can actually be lower on a conventional loan if they like it because it's privately underwritten.
Interesting.
So Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac really are not federally backed entities.
Well,
they trade on the secondary market, right? They pass through.
When I was doing foreclosures back when foreclosures were sexy, no, I mean most attorneys actually jump to that. But yeah, when foreclosures were a hot ticket item, the Fannie Mae and the Freddie Mac loans, we always had to treat those as if they were federal loans, and all of the notice requirements, not just the contract notice requirements. There were some others that were in some federal statutes.
It makes sense you guys would lump them, but I think honestly one day you might have an attorney that pops up there and challenges that.
Well, I might.
Yeah, and says this is not actually a federally backed loan.
Yeah.
Now, I know you said they got bailed out. That may have changed some dynamics, right? But historically speaking, they are not considered federal, right? But
well, we always did.
Okay.
We always did. I think, in the industry, if it's a Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac, even though technically they're not a government agency, they are federally backed mortgages.
So the exclusion is like private money, right? Like,
correct.
Okay.
Right. Yeah, like if you're doing like a hard money loan, people started saying, well, CFPB, all this kind of stuff. Now, sometimes it might apply, because there's all these little small prints that are in that 12 CFR 1026, if anybody's interested in looking that up.
So let's talk about what that is. That's the CFPB requirement. So Frank Dodd came to light a while back and said, the goal was they didn't want the closing numbers to change drastically the minute before closing to put people into a bind, right? Like take it or don't close kind of thing. And so the idea was they had to disclose that stuff in advance, and then they have to redisclose at closing and everything. Some have tolerances where they can be off up to like 10%, and others have to be exact. They can't change. And so they wanted the consumer to have that 3 days before closing. Right. And those numbers pretty much have to be the same when you get there.
Right, yeah, because it used to be just the TILA and RESPA, and you would get your closing estimate, and then you would have to, but TRID's actually pretty good. I mean, I know there's a lot of people that don't like it because, it was a change. People never like change. So, when all this was happening, but, so.
Well, so what happened before, let me just add a little bit to this. I came from the mortgage business. So I had one time, because I used to do loans all over the state and in some other states. And I had one in like West Palm Beach where this was actually a builder contract. And I had back then, instead of transmitting stuff electronically, we actually FedExed everything, like appraisals, photos on the appraisal, that sort of stuff. And so the builder, like when you read the language, especially on builder contracts, very one-sided, but basically the builder says he has to close tomorrow or I'm taking his escrow and basically selling his house to someone else. So I pulled the contract, looked at it, and realized, he probably could do that based on the contract. And so I pulled it out, I highlighted it, and I literally hand walked that to my rep at Countrywide back in the day, if you can remember that. But they got that loan done in 4 hours, and he funded it right away. So in this particular case, like the one we were talking about yesterday, David had a closing date of yesterday. So the lender had everything done. And before all, the Frank Dodd Act and all this stuff started, there would have been a lot of pressure on the lender to get that done that day, because contractually that's the closing day. You close it at any time, even if it's midnight, but it's got to close today, right? Mm-hmm. So this CFPB requirement now says, great, it's clear to close, but you got a 3-day wait. You can't make them close today because there's a federal waiting period of 3 days.
Guns and mortgages.
Is that days or is that business days?
So for example,
calendar.
Well, yeah, Wednesday or Thursday, for example, if they triggered the closing disclosure Wednesday or Thursday, that could close Monday either way.
Right.
Okay. And nobody can close on a Sunday?
No.
Just because the banks aren't open.
Or a federal holiday. Think about it like this. If the Federal Reserve is closed and money can't change hands, the closing won't occur.
Gotcha.
It'll fall to the Monday
for example, 5. Last Friday was an instant federal holiday. That was fun.
My bank was open, though.
No, it was literally decided the night before.
No, I know. Yeah.
What was the holiday?
Juneteenth is now a federal holiday. So let me tell you what that did to us. That moved closings. Nothing could fund because the Federal Reserve was closed. It changed all kinds of stuff.
Wow.
So we had stuff bump, into this week. All right.
Would that be force majeure?
I think that's more
we're getting there. We're getting there.
Catastrophic.
Okay, so
They still need to space out these federal holidays, though, because we have a drought between January 1 and now Juneteenth, and then we have pockets of them all together.
yeah.
Yes.
I agree.
Yep.
All
We
right,
need
so
one a month, really.
I'm all for that.
occupancy and possession. Let's basically just break this down. So it says basically the seller and their items has to be out by closing, pretty much, right?
Mm-hmm.
You want to add some to that?
Well, I've never actually seen, it's kind of funny. I was looking at this. I've never seen a pre-occupancy where it says that if occupancy is to be delivered before closing, buyer assumes all risk of loss to the property from date of occupancy. I've actually never. Have you ever run into a pre-occupancy?
Yeah, I have.
Really?
And I can tell you.
They need to get their insurance started early.
That's the thing. I can tell you, if let's say, God forbid, right? And this is where I think an attorney. I'm not, but I think like you guys. So, in the instance of pre-occupancy, buyer assumes a risk of loss, right? Which means they would technically need to get insurance.
Yep.
But it's not their home to insure technically yet because it's a pre-occupancy. This is where the insurance companies would do like this if there was a claim in that small window from pre-occupancy to closing, right?
So I would say you need it. There's insurable interest, right? So if it's in a legal contract that then they have insurable interest. I would think, personally.
Yeah, but you know how insurance companies are. They don't like to pay, so...
No, of course not.
They don't like to pay, and if, the seller needed to file a claim, I would think they'd subrogate against the buyer. Just because it's in the contract, they do have the insurable interest, and that's how I would read it. What do you think? You're the attorney.
Well, I mean, I also have to go back. I said pre-occupancy. I guess there's no such thing as pre-occupancy.
Yeah,
there is.
Pre-closing.
Pre-closing occupancy.
There is.
Pre-closing occupancy.
That's what pre-occupancy is, before closing, and post-occupancy by seller. We're seeing a lot of that. I told you right now.
I would be curious as to what, if I was the seller, I wouldn't cancel my insurance policy, but I'd be
of course not.
Depending on the claim, though, I'd be interested on how they would do it. Right.
Right. Yeah. I mean, how do you get homeowners insurance if you're just a renter?
Right.
But I mean, it is an insurable interest.
Right.
Lloyd's of London.
That would be fun to fight about later for an attorney, not me. Anyway, the other thing too that it says in there is that the property has to be property to be buyer free of tenants and occupants and future tenancies. Seller also to have removed all personal items and trash from the property. So
is there an addendum in there if you're buying, because I know a lot of people that'll buy these rental properties, the tenant staying, the owner of the property is switching hands, but the tenant staying. So how does that work?
That's where this next paragraph comes into play.
That's line 71. And, I think a lot of these are overlooked. I'm going to say the word overlooked a lot today because, for instance, jumping ahead to paragraph 9, the title evidence, that's an area where the seller is really required to give their current title policy to the buyer within 5 days. But anyways, so I hear the music, but this basically says within 5 days after the effective date, if there's a tenant, then the seller has to give that lease to the buyer, and then the buyer has 5 days from that date. So that's another out. One day I actually went through and figured out all of the outs.
I know where they all are. I know where every single one of them is in the contract.
That's one of the main questions. How do I get out of this?
Yeah, well, as an attorney, you need to know that, right? As a real estate attorney,
no,
where's all the outs?
Of course.
We're almost out of time.
More billable hours if you didn't know all the outs yet, though.
Yes.
You know?
So, assignability, we'll talk about that when we come back. It's a tiny little section in paragraph 7.
Don't allow that, yeah. Always click that third box.
Yeah. I have one right now that took it because it's one of these investors, and they can sell it to one of their other LLCs.
Right, related companies.
All right, we'll be back. Stick around.
Welcome home. Final segment of the Flar Bar contract. Leo Kane here with Beryl Engineering and Inspection.
Flar bar?
Flar bar.
Flar bar?
Flar bar.
Foo bar.
David,
Foo bar.
we've only got through a page and a half. It's 12
Yeah, I was
pages.
saying we're going to be here till Christmas.
We're going to make this a monthly segment, and we'll go through 2 pages a month.
Yeah.
That sounds like fun, yeah. Because then I can learn more of it. You're actually teaching me a lot.
So, financing, let's talk about that. So this is another hot button right now, especially in this market. So let's chat about this.
This is the biggest one out there. And actually, funny, I came across a case yesterday, just doing some research. And one of my first trials actually had to do with one of these where the buyer missed giving the notice.
Oh, the commitment date.
Right. And
Yep.
so and it was a sizable earnest money. It was about $10,000, which, I mean, that's nothing to sneeze at. But we actually went to court, but it went to a jury trial. I hate to say that I lost that jury trial because the jury felt bad for the buyer because, you've always been in a situation where, wow, I put 10 grand down.
Did you
and I
represent
fell
the buyer or
through.
the seller?
Seller.
Okay, the seller.
Yeah, well, because, that the seller granted that buyer so many extensions to get this thing done, and so many extensions to get this thing done, and then they just completely failed to do it. And it didn't actually fall within any of those on that next page between 117 and 120. Those are kind of like the, your last saving grace provisions if you don't close even after you have loan approval. But back to what I was saying, this one case from South Florida. Shout out to our friends in South Florida.
What?
Right. What? And I don't want to get too in the weeds with it, but basically what it was the buyer failed to give the notice that they had gotten loan approval. They got loan approval, but it wasn't the loan approval as to the financing terms on page 1. The financing terms on page 1, which purchase price, of course, and then paragraph 2C, financing, loan amount. So, that's line 38. They had a certain amount in there, but the amount that they were approved for
was not that
amount, even though they were approved for a loan. So then the appraiser goes out after the contingency period ended and said, well, we can't close because the property's not appraising. So they went to court because, of course, that was like a $62,000 earnest money deposit. This is in South Florida. And so the seller sued and said, I'm entitled to that $62,000. And the buyer says, nope, here
I had a
on this.
financing contingency.
Well, it had a financing contingency, but on paragraph 8, small VII, which would be, I guess, lowercase 7.
7, yeah.
Lowercase ruminals.
Line 116.
Line 116 for
Right.
those counting at home. Yeah.
Yep. The trial court actually said, yes, the buyer should get their deposit back, but then I think it was the 4th DCA. Maybe it was the 3rd DCA. Anyways, the District Court of Appeal, they actually came back and said, well, your financing terms did not meet the loan approval because you never actually really got loan approval.
So they decided for the seller?
Even though they, yeah. Yep. So the seller got to keep that $62,000, which I when you get into litigation, I always tell clients, look, this is going to be expensive.
Yes.
You're going to be here longer than you want to be.
So can I ask you about that?
Sure.
Like $62,000 deposit you're fighting over. How much in attorney's fees would you say is coming out of that $62,000?
$62,000.
I always get that question, and it's one of those things where I cannot say because it could settle at mediation.
No. I'm assuming you're taking it all the way to a
Assuming you
jury
take it
trial.
all the way to a jury trial.
all the way to
Oh
jury
my
trial.
God! Well, actually, that one case was a bench trial, and that was one thing I wanted to add in there. Sorry, I know I'm on.
That's okay.
He got
My mind is
80,000 of
going.
the 62.
Right. I would like
attorney. He's worth it.
I would like to write in here in the additional terms, no disrespect to juries, but I would like to write buyer and seller waive jury trial because most of these issues are legal issues, and it would be nice if they, if a judge would look at these legal issues because when you're talking to a jury,
They get
it's going
emotions
right over their
involved.
head.
Yeah.
Right. They try to put themselves into it. So what was your question? I forgot your last question.
Well, let's go back and read the paragraph that you're talking about. It says, if loan approval has been obtained or deemed to have been obtained as provided above, and buyer fails to close this contract, then the deposit shall be paid to the seller unless failure to close is due to 1, seller's default or inability to satisfy other contingencies of this contract, 2, property-related conditions of the loan approval have not been met, except when such conditions are waived by other provisions of the contract, or 3, appraisal of the property obtained by buyer's lender is insufficient to meet the terms of the loan approval,
right.
in which events the buyer shall be refunded the deposit, thereby releasing the buyer and seller from all further obligations under this contract. So it would sound like the buyer should get their money back, but you said the seller actually won?
The seller actually won that case, and it came down to, and I think this is important for all the listeners to take, this is a contract where time is of the essence.
It says it right in the contract.
Yep, time is of the essence. These dates are not flexible. People might be flexible, but when you...
It's a contract at the end of the day.
Correct.
Yeah.
So what I do in my formerly nicotine-stained fingers, I have here a handy-dandy little deadline, milestones, and I would suggest that everybody create some type of a deadline sheet.
Oh, we
and
have
then
that.
Calendar it. Yes. No.
We have that pinned in the background of the file and then on our board.
Right.
Yeah.
And I've actually gone through and put all of the sections where it says this is what's required, this is what's needed, and if I'm shepherding a closing from cradle to grave, I'll have that completely filled out and I'll have it all calendared. But in this case that we were talking about, the buyer did not give their loan
commitment?
approval document. Right. Yeah, loan commitment.
They didn't give it at all, or it didn't match what page 1 said?
Didn't give it at all. They actually got loan approval later, but it was after the date. And so it says the loan approval has been obtained or deemed to have been obtained.
Which means if that date passes, they assume that it's approved.
Correct. But the court said that since the term loan approval is actually a defined term in the contract, loan approval does not equal deemed to have been obtained. It's a very interesting case.
So what that means is they assume you're approved, but you don't actually have the money. That's what that means, right?
Right. I know a lot of this stuff might be going over everybody's.
Nice and simple for the lady.
Yeah, we're never going to get through this contract with this kind of stuff going on. I can give you the case side. I was looking at it last night. Florida Investment Group 100 LLC versus LaFont. It's
I had
fourth DCA, I believe.
way too much fun this hour. What about you guys? Were you bored to tears or what? You just want to talk about
I had a
engineering
blast.
stuff?
I had a blast.
I had a good time.
Very good.
So, no, I love lawyers like David because they understand the contract. We can get into very detailed things. As a matter of fact, on another property that we had, it literally boiled down to one word in the whole contract. So, anyway, we're going to have you back. This is way too much
meet
fun.
your deadlines.
Meet the deadlines. And your agent will
calendar
know
it,
what they are.
Meet your deadlines.
We'll see you next month for
All right,
page
love
3.
where you live, or we'll fix it. We'll be back for hour number 2, so stick around.